Socrates was put on trial for these charges of corrupting the youth and impiety towards the gods. In your book, at the end of your chapter, you get an excerpt from what we believe is, or what we believe could very well be, what Socrates said to defend himself against these crimes. Like I said, Socrates never wrote anything down, so everything we have of him comes from his student Plato. Plato wrote everything he wrote in dialogue form. And Plato's dialogues can be divided up into a number of different ways. First, there are the early dialogues. The early dialogues are thought to be recountings of conversations Socrates actually had. The later dialogues that Plato writes are they're Plato's own ideas. He's no longer telling us things Socrates did. He is putting forth his own ideas, but he's doing so in a way that makes it sound like it's Socrates. Basically, he's using Socrates as a mouthpiece. There is a group of middle dialogues that are up for grabs. We don't know. They could possibly be conversations Socrates had, but they might simply be Plato putting his own ideas out there using Socrates as a mouthpiece. Well, one of Plato's dialogues is the Apology. And this is an early dialogue. Like I said, this is thought to be Socrates' defense against these charges. Now, apology comes from the Greek word apologia. And apologia means to defend. So the way we use apology today, this way we use it where it means to show remorse or, to try to make amends for having done something wrong, that is not the original meaning of apology. So in the Apology, the dialogue, we are getting the defense of Socrates. I promise you, he does not apologize. Socrates offers up a defense against both of his crimes. When it comes to corrupting the youth, he asks his prosecutor, whose name was Meletus, he asks Meletus, do you believe that I have done this thing intentionally or unintentionally? Do you believe I am corrupting the youth on purpose or on accident? And Meletus says, why, of course you are doing it intentionally. And Socrates says, but Meletus, wouldn't that mean that I'm a fool? I'm a fool for having done it this way. After all, he says, somebody who corrupts another person is only setting himself up to be hurt in the long run. If I corrupt another person, aren't I causing myself to be harmed down the road? We've seen it before, okay? We've seen this before. Consider just about any book, movie, television show you've ever encountered that has something like a master thief and an apprentice thief, right? Or a master assassin and an apprentice assassin. Okay? The master is teaching the apprentice his skills. And then what happens at the end of the movie? The apprentice kills the master, right? The apprentice shoots up the master or kills the master in some way. The master has been harmed. This is what Socrates is saying. Socrates is saying that if he were intentionally corrupting the youth, he would have to be a fool, because he is simply setting himself to be at harm down the road. And after all, if he's doing it unintentionally, he shouldn't be prosecuted. He shouldn't be charged with a crime, because unintentionally, he is doing it without knowing he's doing it, without intending to do it. You don't charge someone for a crime under those conditions. You correct their behavior, you teach them to do better, and you move on. Okay, then there's impiety towards the gods. He is being charged with not believing in the gods of the city. Athens, as you know from, well, I would imagine from just about anywhere, Athens was a polytheistic society that had a belief in many, many gods, and the claim was Socrates did not believe in these gods. And when asked why people would think he was an atheist, Meletus says, well, we have heard you talk about things above the clouds and below the earth. And Socrates says, but that wasn't me. I wasn't putting forth ideas that gods did not exist, that there were other things better than gods or anything like that. He was offering up a discussion of what other people said. There are writings, there were plays that were put on that discussed ideas like this. Discuss things like Anaxagoras and the clouds, or any number of other authors. And Socrates says, Meletus, these people, they can simply go down to the marketplace and for a drachma purchase the writings, and they can see that they are not my own ideas. Why would I be so foolish as to tell them that they were? They would simply laugh at me and say, ha ha ha, Socrates acts like these are his ideas when clearly they're not. As a result, he says he should not be found guilty of either of these charges, and he should be let go. Well, the men of the city-state, the judges in his trial, did not believe this. In ancient Greece, the trials, the judges were pretty much every man, every citizen of every legal citizen of the city-state. So Socrates' defense was unsuccessful. So then they asked him, they said, well, Socrates, what shall your punishment be? And he says, oh, well, you should let me continue doing what I've been doing, and you should pay me a stipend. Yeah, that didn't go over very well. That did not go over very well. People did not think that that was a good answer for him to continue to do what he's been doing, and then they have to pay him to do it. So he considered, Socrates considered this notion that they might exile him, or they might just tell him to stop doing what he's been doing. And so he says, but I can't. Now I'm reading, you can find the page number in your textbook of where I'm reading at the bottom of your screen, but I'm reading from the textbook. Someone will say, yes, Socrates, but cannot you hold your tongue? And then you may go into a foreign city, and no one will interfere with you. Now I have great difficulty in making you understand my answer to this. For if I tell you that to do as you say would be a disobedience to the God, and therefore that I cannot hold my tongue, you will not believe that I am serious. And if I say again that daily to discourse about virtue and of those other things about which you hear me examining myself and others is the greatest good of man, and that the unexamined life is not worth living, you are still less likely to believe me. He says, I can't stop doing what I'm doing. I can't go somewhere else and stop doing what I'm doing, because the unexamined life is not worth living. I cannot continue to live doing the things that I'm doing. As a result, they sentenced him to death. He says, and again, reading from your textbook, page number is at the bottom of your page, "Let us reflect in another way, and we shall see that there is great reason to hope that death is a good, for one of two things. Either death is a state of nothingness and utter unconsciousness, or, as men say, there is a change and migration of the soul from this world to another. Now, if you suppose that there is no consciousness, but a sleep like the sleep of him who is undisturbed even by dreams, death will be an unspeakable gain." I'm skipping down. "But if death is the journey to another place, and there, as men say, all the dead abide, what good, O my friends and judges, can be greater than this? If indeed, when the pilgrim arrives in the world below, he is delivered from the professors of justice in this world, and finds the true judges who are said to give judgment there, that pilgrimage will be worth making." Death is either a dreamless sleep or the place where I get to go and find all the answers. How could this be a bad thing, he says. Thus, Socrates was sentenced to death.